Well, hello, this is the final boss, and this is the Veiled Being. Uh, to my knowledge, there are a few trigger warnings, but nothing too intense. But for those of you that would be triggered, now is a great time to depart. But as we continue, I'm excited to read this by one of our Twitch viewers, and we're going to go through first 5-10 pages, give what feedback we can, and hopefully help them have a better project, and just give them some tools to help on their revisions. So let's get started. The crescent moon emits a soft glow. So we're in present tense. The soft glow and the stars share the obscurity. So whenever this is an independent clause, and so again, like first sentences matter, right? And this is the only time I'm really going to be super intense about grammar. But because, oops, I put that in the wrong place. Because this is an independent clause, you really need to separate them with a comma. Otherwise, an and cannot splice to independent clauses. And the stars share an obscurity with no lights from the small stars. The crescent moon emits a soft glow, and the stars share the obscurity with no lights from the small city to conceal them. Okay, so this section, I'm not really sure exactly what this is trying to say. So yeah, so again, like, we're trying to evoke stuff with language, build that picture in the reader's brain, but this feels like it's been shuffled a little bit around. Maybe it's part of my formatting, but where it's a little bit less clear the image you're trying to convey to me. So then especially in the first sentence, that really matters. Being simple, using simple sentences, being very clear with your imagery. Because a lot of the way early drafts work is, the first couple of paragraphs, your reader is looking to get their footing in something, right? Like you can have mysteries, you can have a lot of things, but one thing needs to be generally treated as factual or true. Otherwise, the reader will never really be able to orient themselves in the story. So, something to be cautious of. I'm always going to be a lot more, vigilant on early sentences because, again, whenever you send the most important sentence and the most important paragraph in your project is the first, right? Because no one gets past that. All that amazing stuff you've written in later paragraphs just will unfortunately fall on deaf ears. A man in a tattered suit on the stone bridge's parapet watching the moonlight with his shadow. So this is a run-on or this is a fragment actually, because it doesn't have it does not have a verb. Right? So a man in a tattered suit. So that's describing the subject. Oh, I guess what there is. Sat on a stone bridge. Okay, so never mind. I misspoke. Sat on a stone bridge's parapet, watching the moonlight glistening off the river's Caligonus. I have no idea what that means. Water, with his shadow staring back. So I would again break this up a little bit, right? This is not a run-on. It is grammatically correct, but it's just it feels like there's too much getting communicated, and it feels like the sentence is just getting clunky. So never hesitate to just go with a short sentence. His shadow. Oops, why can't I make this work? His shadow stared back at him. Again, and that's like much more concrete. It gives me a very specific image. And again, breaking up your sentence can save can save a lot of reader effort, right? Because if I have to like string back, okay, what's the subject? Go all the way back. Even I, who do a lot of editing, was it like it felt like a run-on, and I was like, oh no, this is correct. Or it felt like a fragment, but I was like, oh no, this is correct. But it was a little tricky to parse, right? And again, you want to make your prose as easy to parse for a reader as possible. In general, there are occasions where you will do the opposite, but usually you want a very good reason to do so, right? Because it just makes the read a lot harder for any reader. Okay, a soft sigh escapes his mouth. The flesh on his cheeks eroded from his salted tears. That feels like this would like dig trenches, so this is like a little bit unclear. So this verb choice, suggests a, surrealistic or fantasy tone where, tears can melt skin. If that's not the intention, consider, a different verb. So again, you know what? I'm going to slide this over just a smidge so you guys can. All right, there we go. That's as good as it's going to get, I think. All right. His nose red from constantly wiping away the snot. His skin pale. So this is So this is a fragment. His nose was red from constantly wiping away the snot, his skin pale. So there's no verb, right? So there's no. So again, you can use fragments in fiction when needed. A lot of famous writers do, and they use it to great effect. But again, like we're in this early phase where the reader is trying to orient themselves, and it's just a higher risk move to make so early on. All of this is okay, since it's literary, consider erring on the safe side of reader comprehension early in a draft, right? So like our goal early in a draft is to make the reader trust the writer, right? And say, okay, if I continue on this journey, it's going to add up. There's going to be continuity, something. Yeah, it's going to be continuous. His sandy blonde hair, a matted mess, and his once radiant sky blue eyes were now languid. So again, sandy blonde hair. So this is a general thing. But usually whenever you have two descriptors separated by a comma, as a writer, and this is just generally a style thing, so this is optional, I would generally encourage deleting the least precise one. And so sandy is a little bit less precise than blonde hair. But again, like this is very, very much in the passive voice, right? So I would consider rewriting this. So like the wind twisted his blonde hair into a matted mess, right? So we still get the same nouns across, right? We still get matted mess for hair. We still get the same descriptors, but we're also having a more structured sentence where we have that subject-verb combo. And then we also can do a little bit of scene setting, right? And that's almost the same amount of words. And his once radiant sky blue eyes. Yeah, I don't know exactly how I would rephrase that second one. I personally might cut that sentence, but that would be a way. Yeah, unnoticed mess. So I'm changing that to unnoticed because, I wanted to show his distraction, right? A depression aura lingered around him. So again, what does this mean? So this is pretty vague, right? What does this mean? Is this a fantasy element where people's feelings have auras? Or, is this a general, demeanor of how they are standing? So again, yeah, once I'm done with this paragraph, I'll start picking up the pace a little bit, but these sentence level things I do really believe are probably some of the most important things. And if I was saying, hey, what would I tell the writer to kind of think about and focus on, a lot of my suggestions probably would orient around saying, hey, make sure that every paragraph is really clear and every sentence in that paragraph is expressing the thought you intend it to express in as simple of a way possible. And you'll find that if you start with those good building blocks, a lot of the rest of the story will flow really well. So like it sounds kind of, grammar schooly, English classy, but those sentence level language choices really and truly add up into whether the reader can picture your scenes, whether the reader can really immerse themselves in the project versus something that feels like there's some distance, in terms of like the reader and what's transpiring. A depression aura lingered around him. I'm just going to cut that. His heart aches with a beat, which each beat, releasing. Start aches doing like it pumped blood. Needles. His heart is heavy. So we're already getting verbal doubling, right? We just had a descriptor of a heart. We just had a description, and a good one, of a, the feeling of his heart. So this feels like it's repeating the last idea. Consider cutting. Because again, I think the needles comparison is a really great one. I think that's like really evocative. I can feel that, right? That's visceral. Like I can imagine what it would be like to have like something sharp just pulsing through my veins. But this second one, nothing but a void, it's a little bit more vague, right? Not as specific, so it's, for at least my reading, it's a little bit less effective. So I would just trust your writing, right? Trust that this is a good execution here, and continue onward. His head felt clouded. So I'm going to go a little faster, and hopefully try to get some plot elements to say. His head felt clouded, his brain pulsated. Let's pulse out, whatever. I'm not going to go into the grammar. It was empty except for the painful mysteries of the past. There was nothing else. No thoughts, no more self-dialogue. He felt confused and lost. This is a really long sentence, right? And you're using comma splices, which is acceptable in literary work. But again, you have a lot of comma splices, which is essentially trying to separate two independent clauses with a comma. I mean, it will make this. It will make the sentence read a lot faster, right? So the sentence pacing will increase quite a bit. So you know what? I'm actually going to. Oh my goodness, did I not pull up my? Oh good, no one's chatted. I was like, I've been missing chat if someone has chatted. I'm gonna pull up my chat bot, and I think I have a style guide that I will very strongly recommend, and you can watch the Twitch replay or whatever to get the link, or you can transcribe the link, but it's really good, so you should check it out. But it talks a lot about this stuff. Like, this will increase the speed of the sentence, right? But this doesn't seem like a fast-paced narrative, right? His head felt clouded. That's kind of a slowing down thought. So the fact that you're using comma splices, which will make the sentence just like start like waterfalling, probably it feels like it doesn't match the content of the sentence. Okay. He felt confused and lost. Stared in the water, deep gazed his body. He takes a deep breath through his nose, and it was not. The last stream of tears running down his cheek. He hugs himself, digging his nails into his arm. I don't think we need deep. It's a little bit over-described. Giving himself a rock and start launching himself forward. He feels himself departing the edge. He keeps his eyes closed, air rushing past his face. So, again, content warning here. But this is pretty... Thankfully, this is pretty, you know, thoughtfully handled. He feels a sudden pressing against his stomach. I feel like he's being suspended over the water before being pulled back. His back pressing against someone's chest. His head, something flossed. His aura began to lighten. Interesting. So, like, you know, I'm still not clear. Is the aura an actual, you know, aspect, you know, visual aspect of his character? Maybe give us visual clues like color or sound, you know, maybe give us, or any sense. Give us, you know, yeah, give us sensory clues. So if this aura actually exists around this character, give us those hints, right? Like, tell us, hey, it smells like this, or it sounds like a low depressive buzz, right? Like that, because, you know, we experience all of life through our five senses and our interior thoughts, right? For the most part. I mean, unless somebody has some extra ESP, you know, whatever. But 99 times out of 10, like, leveraging those five senses will make it easier for your reader to proxy it with their experience, right? So your reader will say, oh, if it smells like acid because, like, you know, like moldy socks because he's depressed, his aura, whatever. That's a silly example, but you know exactly what that means, and you can catch up with the writer, right? Because a lot of the goal of, like, the sentence level work is to make sure you don't leave your reader behind as you're moving forward, right? So that they're always like, okay, I know what you mean, I know what you mean, I know what you mean. And we're getting a little bit of that kind of gap, right? Where I kind of know what you mean, but there's a few things that I feel like I might have been left behind on. My little AI, I'm so sorry. Is this artificial intelligence? Intelligence? AI's hand causing AI to loosen his grip. So again, a little bit sentence structure stuff there to review. AI looks up at the face of the man who stopped him from plunging. So again, this is already known, right? Like, I know that this person was trying to jump off the bridge for self-harm, right? So to some degree, restating this is verbal doubling. I already know the purpose. You did a great job setting up, hey, this is a very depressed person. He's leaning over a precipice, and he tries to launch himself off. And so we can infer that, hey, this was probably an attempt at self-harm, right? He was greeted by a warm and kind smile that produced a sentiment of security, and AI's heart started to melt. Tears started to flow, but this time from happiness. The other white glove. So again, this change of pace, this change of pace seems pretty abrupt, right? Like, so I haven't experienced or been, you haven't described something that would transform someone from being so depressive to, like, elatedly happy, right? Like, this person just grabbed their chest, which it doesn't feel like something miraculous is happening unless they're doing some sort of magic, which I would describe if that's happening. This transition from depression to euphoric happiness seems too sudden, and I haven't experienced, as the reader, anything that would make the switch in me, right? Like, so because the reader is always judging this against what their experience is, right? Where they say, hey, if I was, trying to jump over, if I was really depressed and contemplating self-harm, and someone stopped me, and all they did was just put their hand on my chest and greet me with a warm smile, I don't know if my emotions would change that quickly, right? Unless there's something magical. Then I can imagine that and say, oh, he contacted his aura with his hand, the putrid smell of rotten fruit dissolved, and it began to smell, and his aura began to smell like sunflower seeds, or sunflowers, whatever, or marigolds. That's a little bit easier for me to envision and to say, oh, there's something magical going on. I'll learn about that later. Where right now it does feel like I don't have all the data I need to really understand this transition. Rosa, gently wiping the tears, proceeded to pet AI's head. AI tries to see the rest of the man's face, but it's impossible. In the dark tone, okay, the blanks. Lacey Waltz Veil. I'm not really sure exactly what this is. Again, like, we're kind of having some continued issues with sentence fragments, run-on sentences, and punctuation. So it's definitely worth reading one of those books, right? Because those little those are like the bricks in your building, and the stronger your sentence bricks are, the longer your building will be able to stand up and really do well. So not the end of the world. I mean, I'm still able to track what's going on, but that's definitely something that if you do want to look to get this published, or you want to have broader audience appeal, that might be something worth considering taking another look at. Not sure what this is describing. Only the male's dark hood and blood-red lips took another breath and smelled of freshly baked chocolate tarts. Didn't feel like questioning anything. He felt relaxed, comfortable, something he hadn't felt in a long time. A lover or a sibling, but more love from a parent, mother's love to be more specific. AI, I'm going to take you home. You must be exhausted, poor boy. How about you rest now? Yeah, so I like that this feels sinister. At least that's what I'm feeling. So I like the sinister, hyper controlling vibes. This, person / creature is presenting, and that's all through subtext, right? Like, you're not saying, hey, this person's really suspicious, don't trust them. You're showing me, right? They're behaving in kind of a odd way. They're behaving in a very controlling fashion. They're like, you're going home, my poor boy. So some of these elements are doing a lot of the work for you. So great job there. And look for more opportunities to seed information to the reader like this. Let us make inferences from, what's transpiring on screen. So real quick, I'm going to I think it's exclamation point in style. Yeah, so check out that style glossary. I hope it popped up in chat. Yes. Oh, I'll just paste it again because I think I turned off FinalBot in the chat replay. We'll try this again. There you go. So, would definitely encourage giving it a read. It's a great resource, something that one of my grad school professors gave us, and it was very, very helpful in terms of like giving us good frameworks of like, hey, when do you obey the rules of grammar and when do you break the rules of grammar, and like sort of like what reasoning would you use in each case. Pretty handy dandy stuff if you mind me saying so. All right, so I'm gonna do another page and a half or so. I've been going for about 20 minutes, so I'll get to about 30 minutes and then we will check out the next project. AI's eyes became very heavy as the gloved hand that was petting him now gently glided over his face, closing his eyes. Yeah, the second his eyes closed, I felt into deep and peaceful. So yeah, this definitely, reinforces the sinister tone of this, visitor. That's awesome. I think this is great. So, this section is really great. AI wakes the next morning and looks about finding himself in his apartment. His apartment was clean. The air didn't feel heavy. So again, I would really, the mood of his apartment was homey and welcoming. So like, if I'm waking up in my own apartment, I generally don't think about how it looks. And this is the same thing about, the very common issue of, someone looking in the mirror and saying, oh, I have brown hair, I have blue eyes, or green eyes, or whatever. It does feel very artificial, right? Because you're using close third person, right? So we're kind of using his head. His apartment was clean, the air didn't feel so heavy, so who's feeling this? The character is feeling this. AI, or I, whatever. I'm bad at pronunciation, so don't mock me too much. But I, essentially, is observing this feeling. So we're kind of doing free indirect discourse from his point of view here. And the fact that he's describing things that might already be evident rings a little false. Not the end of the world, but it's something to consider in terms of how to communicate these scene level things without sounding on the nose. And one of the ways a lot of people do it is, what's the difference, right? Like, AI woke up the next morning, so it wakes the next morning in his studio apartment. All the clothes he'd left out last night were gone, right? Like, all the clothes and pizza boxes and everything, right? Wakes the next morning. You could do, all the pizza boxes and clothes choking his studio were gone. Place was spotless. Did he... And then you can cut to here, right? So that would be like an example rewrite of saying, or Argon, sorry. Forget, I'm used to writing in past tense. Place is spotless. And actually, homie, what happened? Last night. And that, like, what happened last night, even though we're in the third person, we can zoom in, give a thought, and then zoom back out, right? So that's one of the really powerful tools in a close third-person writer's tool belt, is the ability to kind of go deeper into the character and then move back out. So something worth researching is free indirect discourse. It's a very, very helpful tool, especially if you're going to be doing more writing in close third person. Fresh batch of band kicks in at the dining room table. AI stands, looking around his room before doing a quick search of his apartment. Whoever was... no one here. So again, you can just cut, like, so this is kind of like restating whoever was here was gone. You can just do he was alone. Yeah, I walked over to the table, staring down at the plate of pancakes. No thoughts of danger popped into his head. What is this? This is vague, right? What, for a moment, he worried about poison, but he had been trying to jump, off a bridge last night. So, why not? Why not take a bite, that would be like an example rewrite that maybe could be leveraging some free indirect discourse here. All right, how am I doing on time? All right, on time. I have an event to head to this afternoon, so I do have a little bit of a ticking clock. His eyes, but it increases tension and stakes, right? His eyes are closed, savoring the taste. Is buttery and sweet. So good job using taste. But you don't even have to call it out. You could just do, his eyes closed, and you could do an M dash. Perfectly buttery and sweet. So, right, so those are some little tweaky ways to like shrink things down, but also have every word deliver a little bit more information, right? Because we're just trying to, upload information to the reader as efficiently as possible. They're fluffy, causing them to, they were fluffy and they melted in his mouth. So again, this is verbal doubling, right? So this is telling me both a cause and an effect. Just pick one. I'm going to try to go a little faster. I apologize. Pancakes warmed his stomach, satisfied his hunger, dresses after a hot shower. It's been 2 weeks since he bothered with any type of self-hygiene. Since he worked off bothering to call off the first few days of the first week. Brought a few life. Once brought back to life. So I don't know exactly. So again, I'm not exactly sure how he was brought back to life. How was he brought back to life? And how does he think about / know this? He was kind of entranced by the man on the bridge. So it feels weird for him to, dispassionately think about it. Yeah, so he's very matter-of-factly thinking about it, like, I guess I've been really depressed for a while. What do you know? But again, like, this has been a huge event, right? Like, the first scene, for at least my reading, felt like a transformative scene, right? Like, somebody goes in, it's night and day change, and, and then they're just kind of, oh yeah, cool, I guess I feel better now. So how does he feel about this person? I mean, it seems like he does remember, what happened last night. It does sound like he remembers because he says, he was brought back to life. So, like, what does he think about what happens? How does he feel about what was done to him? Like, someone kind of overrode his ability to choose and, convinced him to just go home, rather than hurting himself. Then he realized he hasn't been home for the past 2 weeks either. He goes, putting on his shoes, grabbing his keys, and heading off. Goes, putting on his shoes. So remember, this is a really broken up verb. Goes, putting on his shoes. So we can just say AI puts on his shoes. If I can, grabs his keys. Yeah, Google's even getting me here. And heads off. So making those the more like the core root verbs of the sentence will add a lot into. Okay, so I'm gonna zoom ahead a little bit. Okay, looks like a total mess. Shoots through the text before letting him know whereabouts. Second level, into deep, concentrated, deep. So again, whenever we have two words separated, two descriptors with a comma, generally best practice is to cut the least effective one. And from my point of view, that's concentrated voice. I don't know what that really entails. A deep voice, I know what that means. A deep voice calls out. So we're switching tenses. So we've been in present tense this whole time. So ensure we stay true to tense unless 100% necessary to change. Yeah. He enters slowly. Big, thin, muscular man. Hello, sir. I wasn't sure if I should show my face or not. AI. He lets out a sigh of relief. Thank God you're alive. Sit. Where have you been? I had some personal problems. Well, at least you're safe now. So, like, was this the person who rescued him? Was, did this person know about his danger? I thought, he hadn't texted anyone. So again, is this the guy that came and got him last night? If not, we should be notified of that and say, hey, this is, I recognized him from, whatever. I was wondering if I still have a job here. I know I've been a bad employee. Of course you still have a job. Just don't pull that stunt again. Told you to call me Martin. Just calling you this. Do you have any stories you want me to work on? Taken care of. How about you find one on your own? Call you if I need anything. All right, thank you. So again, there's not much conflict in this scene, right? So like, there isn't much conflict in this scene. Both characters want AI to start his job again. They chat, and he starts his job again. Finding those moments of conflict, or at least having two opposed goals, is going to be really, really critical. So I'm got to be respectful of time. I do have another project I want to take a look at, which is called City of Men. So stay on for that. But I'll give a quick overview of my thoughts. So overall, I think this project's really interesting, right? I think it deals with important themes, and it has some cool fantasy elements of, hey, like, what is, what are these auras that, a certain character is able to tap into and influence, and these types of things. I think a lot of the areas to kind of continue to develop will be, sentence level stuff, ensuring the scenes have conflict, because like the first scene has conflict, right? It has two characters with different goals. One character wants to jump off the bridge, the other person does not, and even though that's a very kind of understated conflict, it still is one, right? So I would encourage you to think about that in the terms of these other scenes, right? Because he just wakes up in his house, describes his house, and then leaves, right? So why do we need to see that? So again, there's certain things of just like choosing what you put on screen, right? For the reader, just to make sure that, hey, it's going to be dramatic as well as communicating information. I think that push and pull of drama and exposition are probably, what's the old adage? Exposition plus conflict is drama. Feels like we're leaning a little bit too heavy on the exposition side, and we need to increase the conflict in order to get that drama that we're looking for. But overall, I think this is a cool project. I'm excited to see how it develops, and great job to the writer for putting this together. It's very cool. Have a good one.